All right, so welcome to BoxTheBase. I'm your host Vic. That's my co-host Josh, and there's
Yes,
a lot of
sir.
baseball to talk about, but we're gonna kick it off talking about the Marlins. They had a very first series versus the Pirates, walked off 3 out of 4 games. The one versus the Mets, not so good. Maybe less positives than the Pirates one, but at least I think there are still some positives to be talked about with this team. But if you saw today's game, which we're recording
Yeah,
today on what April 2nd,
yeah.
so
Wednesday afternoon game.
yeah, so if you saw the Wednesday afternoon game, tomorrow's an off day for them. They're heading to Atlanta, but it was honestly a bit of an up and down game because it didn't start off so bad, it didn't end the prettiest. So before we get into the game itself, just overall thoughts on how they started.
I mean, all things considered, you can't complain, right? I mean, listen, if you would have told me before the season the Marlins are going to start 4-3, I would have laughed in your face and I would have said, "Yeah, right." So yeah, we dropped the bad one today. I think that out of all 7 games that we played so far, there's no doubt in my mind that this game by far was the worst one out of the 7. And that's even including Monday's 10-4 game,
Yeah, it was a
but
blow up.
which was a blowout game. But I think today's game was definitely the lower of this, the lowest of the 7 games. However, I will say this: they have started 4-3. They have fought. In every game, no matter whether they've been up or down, they haven't quit. And going into the season with not expectations of many wins to be had, I will say that as long as there's no quit and they continue trying to win games, that's what matters.
Yeah,
And today, and that goes to the manager too. You have a manager that clearly cares about winning and cares about the players and wants them, believes in them. And sometimes, in the first 7 games, sometimes he's believed in them too much, in my opinion. But I think, overall, even though I feel we should have been 5-2 with today's game, overall you can't complain about the start. You can't complain about it.
no, definitely not. I mean, they're playing above expectations, have won way more games than anyone would have, I think, would have expected up to this point. Whether it's because you want to say they played the Pirates and the Pirates are not a good team, clearly, or because you want to say when we caught the Mets at the right time and took a game from them because they're clearly struggling. I mean, yes, some players, I said this off the air before in the series, but I said hopefully we don't kickstart and jumpstart any of these Mets into getting hot. Clearly, we did that with freaking Pete Alonso this series. But then again, I don't know if it was that we did that with Pete Alonso or Pete Alonso just there's something about that guy whenever he steps into Miami or whenever he faces us. That guy, I'm gonna blatantly say it. And if you're a sports fan, you can understand this statement. He's a criminal. This guy I don't have his stats in front of me, but he, ever since he debuted, has destroyed the Marlins. He turns into Barry Bonds versus us, and that's what happened in this Mets series. I mean, he went what 3 for 4 today. I don't know how many times he walked. I don't know how many at bats he had in total. He had 2 big home runs this series. I
And
mean,
I think I think to your point about Pete Alonso, that is kind of what I was alluding to when I was mentioning our manager believing in players too much at times. Listen, there's nothing wrong with being aggressive and saying, "Hey, we're gonna get this guy out." He's no monster. We're not scared of him. Whatever. Pete Alonso hits a grand slam on Monday. Which I'm one that believes that he may have left Tranquil. What's his name again?
who?
The pitcher that was starting on Monday.
Oh,
Tranquil,
Kyle Quantrill.
Quantrill. I'm one to believe that he may have left Quantrill in a bit too late in that game. You know, Today, Alonso had an RBI in the first, I believe. Then, he comes up in the eighth and he has 2 men on, and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, here we go again." Personally, I would have walked him. He pitches to him again, hits a 3-run homer.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean. Alonso is just somebody that the Marlins have to avoid. I mean, it's not like he just broke out and had a big. I mean, he did break out in 2025 in this series because he was playing terrible in the first one. He didn't really do a lot. Now poor whoever's gonna face him next because we just jump started him. It feels like I don't know the Mets schedule, so I don't know who they play next. But I mean, they're gonna get a red hot Pete Alonso. We have to see them not that long after. I mean, we play Atlanta, and then we're in New York to face the
on
Mets,
Monday. On Monday.
which yeah, on Monday, which is gonna be scary. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's not talk about the New York series yet. So the series versus the Pirates was, like I said earlier, 3 walk-offs in 4 games.
It was spectacular.
It was spectacular. They played well. Honestly, aside from the blowout Monday, I think a lot of the players played well. Is there anybody? I mean, talking about the Met series that I think they mostly played well. Is there anybody, maybe a group of players that has stood out to you so far?
I think personally the most impressive, and this is including, I'm including the Met series because he also played well this series. I think that, I mean, especially today, I mean, Griffin Conine today he played, I mean, spectacular. He went 3 for 5. You know, in the Pirate series, he had the spectacular catch. He had the home run. And he's gotten himself on base. And Griffin Conine, as long as he keeps the K's down, as long as he isn't swinging, which in that last inning he had a terrible strikeout.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, towards the end of the game.
Towards the end of the game. So as long as he keeps that down and he keeps just putting the bat on the ball, I think that he's gonna end up being a pretty important player if we're gonna keep on winning games.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback on that point of Griffin Conine, I saw on Twitter that somebody put out a stat that he has like an 8 defensive run save, DRS, and that clearly has shown. I mean, not only does he play a good outfield, he robbed a home run in the Pirates series. He came up with a really big home run on Sunday in that Pirates series, and
He
he
had a home run
honestly
yesterday too.
he hit a home run yesterday. That was a big one in winning that game.
Yep.
So he's been somebody who's played really well for us early on. I'm gonna be honest. I think somebody who's impressed me a little bit. Well, not impressed me, but like I guess a lot of people. I was high on him before the season. Is Otto Lopez. I didn't think he had. I mean, he had a good season last year. In what 117 games I think it was or something he played with
Yeah.
us, but it wasn't anything crazy. I didn't expect him to play up to the same level as last year, but I'm like, it's stats that are repeatable. It's not anything out of this world. It's not like he put up crazy numbers that aren't repeatable. So Otto Lopez has played well. To highlight somebody else, I think Fortes, when he's been there, has played really well. Um, who's somebody else that I think comes to mind for me right now would be
Did we mention Stowers?
Stowers. We haven't mentioned. I mean, that guy's been walking like crazy. I don't know where his hits are at. He's had some hard hit outs, but I think the most impressive thing with him has been so far that he's been taking a lot of walks.
A lot of walks, and I'm sorry to correct myself. I meant to say that he hit the home run yesterday
Yeah,
versus the Mets. He hit the home run yesterday, and I mean I believe he walked about 3 times today.
yeah.
So he's been walking a lot. He got that walk off on opening day versus the Pirates. He's been really good. He's been getting himself on base. Definitely surprising people that thought that he wasn't going to be very effective for this team.
I mean, I don't even. This is a player that I don't even blame people for not thinking that. Last year when he came over, he really didn't do a lot. He didn't look good. He wasn't able to hit the fastball. That was one of his biggest problems. His spring training stats were horrible. He didn't look good at all. And now, I mean, he just came out of the gate red hot. Like I don't know if it's just him, the new philosophy with the hitting, and it's helping him be patient and take a lot of walks. But it's
Looks
working.
good.
Whatever he's doing is it's working. Um, So yeah, moving on from that and all that, and now we can kind of more dissect, I guess, this Met series, if you will. Is there any talking points? Is there anything that stood out to you this series?
Yeah, I think the reason I mentioned earlier that I didn't think Monday's game was the worst of the series, even though it was a 10-4 game, is because I feel that that series went away in that fifth inning for Quantrill. And I think that if you take the Pete Alonso Grand Slam away, that game is totally different. However, that brings my point to the managing, that I think that at times Clayton has been too confident in the players. You know, up to that point, Quantrill had pitched a good game.
Yeah,
So, you know, at that point, Soto gets on base. The bases are loaded. I believe there was one out. You
I think
know,
so.
bases are loaded. There's one out. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, this guy has lost the control. Let's take him out. And as you know, even though he hadn't done it yet to that point, Pete Alonso is a known Marlins killer. So with the bags loaded, I believe he put him up 3-0. He puts him up 3-0, and then he has no choice but to start throwing him fastballs.
Yeah,
And on the second fastball he threw him, you saw what happened. He crushed it. So I think if there's one takeaway for me from this Met series is that McCullough has to be more quick when it comes to pulling the plug.
definitely.
What?
But I also think that unfortunately, I mean, I understand in that spot, like you want him to go and take out the starter, especially if it's someone like Quantrill. It's not your ace. It's not somebody you should be dying on the hill with. But I think what happened here is unfortunately we have the most innings used by our bullpen, not counting the Cubs and the Dodgers, because the Cubs and the Dodgers have played more games than us so far. Thankfully, we have an off day tomorrow, Thursday, as we head to Atlanta. We'll get into that off day in a second because I think it's going to be a needed and important one for this team. But it's just one of those where I think McCullough he was willing to die with Quantrill on the mound because he told him, I don't know if he told himself or if it was from upstairs or from where, but this bullpen is used up. I need to save somebody, and if Pete beats us, so be it. Did I like the decision? Not at all. But it's just one where I think also being a rookie manager plays into it because McCullough is a first time manager.
Sure, and I get that. I think that there's going to be a lot of growing pains and a lot of what the hell was that moments this year when it comes to the managing. And he gets the pass because it's his first year, but it's like, here's my thing, right? Quantrill gives up the grand slam, and the very next batter, guess what? He takes him out. So if you were going to do that, why not bring the reliever in for Alonso?
Yeah,
That's my question.
they had that lefty, which I need to learn his name. If you guys want to look him up, it starts with a V, so his last name. I need to learn his name, but they had him their lone lefty in the pen right now, warming up. That should have been the move. Take out Quantrill and have the lefty pitch to
To Alonso,
to
right?
Alonso. Um, and then we move on to game two, the Sandy start, which was versus Kodai Senga. That's where we mentioned earlier that Kyle Stowers had that home run in what the first inning it was,
I believe it was first inning, yeah.
and they kind of they jumped on Kodai Sengai early. Then Kodai Senga got in a groove with that ghost fork, and we didn't score anymore. Sandy was also good, but there is some concern. At least some people feel like there is concern with Sandy because they put him out there only 5 innings. They took him out after 70 pitches. In my opinion, he was a little cleaner than his first outing because he didn't really have any walks, and they just yanked him after five innings and 70 pitches.
I don't know. I think that people are looking in and reading in too much into it. And me and you had a conversation, off the podcast earlier today about the whole thing. I think that it was a product of what happened on opening day. I think on opening day he left him in much longer than he was supposed to. You know, on opening day Sandy threw almost 100 pitches through
Yeah,
5 innings. So you know what? He pitched 5 innings yesterday. He only had 70. He could have gone one or two more, sure, whatever. But I think at the end of the day, it's just him getting back into the groove. I mean, man, he didn't pitch for 18 months.
yeah,
So at the end of the day, it's I think it's not too much of a big deal as people are making it out to be. Sandy's not going to come out throwing 9 innings, 125 pitches, and stay in the game just because he's hot. At this point in time, I think it's valuable, especially if they perceive this as a winning team going forward. If that's really the case, then they should preserve him. And if those innings are going to matter in July, August, and September, then you might as well save him for that time.
yeah. And also, I didn't really catch it during the game, but from what I was seeing after the game and stuff, and going back to look at it, his velo, at least on his fastball, was down a little bit. He was more like mid 90s rather than upper 90s. And honestly, I'm not too worried about his velocity because his off speed velocity was fine. It was mostly his fastball velocity that was a little down. In the spring though, his velocity was fine every outing that he threw. Although the difference was in spring training, he had a little more rest in between starts. He wasn't starting every fifth day. Now during the season, he's going to be starting every fifth day. He needs to get back in the groove of the recovery because he also in the post game interview he talked about
I
his
did say that.
recovery, yeah, and how it feels a little tougher. I mean, he's getting back into the groove of a full like pitching routine after being out like you said 18 months. So I'm not too worried about him. And I mean, by now we're already like what? How many hours after that game last night? We would
Or
have found
yeah,
out. We would have
yeah.
found out if he was hurt.
And he said it. He said it post game. He said, "I'm just tired." And to me, that's what I just think it is. I just think he's tired. I just think that he hasn't gotten back into the groove. And at the end of the day, I believe, and I believe McCullough really felt like we are going to win that game yesterday. So he's like, you know what? There's a good chance to pull him now. He did
Yeah,
it and we won.
and if and I mean there was some talks about limiting his innings in like in spring training. I don't know if that stuff actually is part of the plan or not, but I mean, if it is, we saw it yesterday, and I'm okay with that because I don't think every game he's gonna pull him after 5 innings just to save his arm.
No,
It's gonna be matchup by matchup. It's gonna be how is the outing going, what is happening in the game, what is the current situation at the moment. If there's maybe he gets in a jam and there's runners on. It's at the end of the day, the MLB in general has become very matchup oriented, even if you're an ace. So I think personally, there's no worries about him.
I
Um,
agree. I don't believe so. I think that's a topic over the last 24 hours that's been looked in a little too much. I think he's just recovering, and if you're expecting to see Sandy throw 9 innings, you're not going to get it anytime soon.
yeah, and I mean, if not every outing is gonna be high 90s, on his fastball, that's okay. Like yesterday, he made it work without needing high 90s. This guy can mix his pitches up very well. He's I mean, if this lower velocity allows him to throw more innings at some point, maybe later on in the year or something, that's okay. This guy has been a workhorse his whole career. It's the sole reason I think he ended up with Tommy John. Anyways, he has almost 1,000 innings. He has and since like 2020, I saw a stat. He has like over 600 innings, 10 complete games. I mean, first of all, nobody's really doing it like that anymore in the MLB,
Right. It just
and
doesn't happen.
I mean, sometimes you got to save their arms early in the year. And at the end of the day, we end up winning the game. Maybe it's a different conversation if you lose, but it's also like he's coming off of Tommy John. That's really all you can say.
I agree. I agree.
So that's kind of the Mets series. A little disappointing end to it, especially today. with his game. I mean, when they brought in Calvin Fauché, what inning was that? The ninth or the eighth? I think it was.
O'Shea was the one that ended up blowing the lead. Yeah, it was the eighth.
Yeah, the eighth. And I mean, honestly, I'm not necessarily upset with that. I'm upset with the result at the end, obviously, with that Alonso home run. But it's like Fauché threw him everything. It felt like, and he was fouling off everything. I mean, the one thing that I was saying, at least during the game, to myself, and it's what I feel like a lot of teams should do against Alonso, is pitch him up. Nobody really throws him up. I mean, he's a low ball hitter.
I'm gonna take the different route on this, and I'm gonna just say that why pitch to him at all?
That
In
that
a
is also that is also another that is also a fair argument. I mean, he's we said it earlier. He kills us all the time, so might as well just not pitch to him in that situation. Walk
like
him.
in a situation and in a year and in an era of baseball that has become so tech and matchup oriented, it doesn't take rocket science. Pete Alonso hit a grand slam on Monday. He hit an RBI double earlier in the game. He comes up with two men on. Why? Why would you decide that now in the bottom of the eighth with two outs that you're gonna pitch to him with two men on and a 3-run lead?
Yeah.
Why risk it? Who are we scared of? Brandon Nimmo? Like, come on, bro.
Brandon
It,
Nimmo was
it
like
just
0 for 4 or 0 for 5 today. I don't know, something like that.
yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, and I genuinely said this once the game was over. Well, not even once the game was over, but just after that Alonso moment. At this point, with the way the series went, I understand that Juan Soto was batting before him in the lineup order, but I'd rather face Juan Soto 10 times out of 10 than ever have to fix a Pete Alonso.
And I want to credit my brother for saying this, and it's absolutely true. Had if you subtract the Pete Alonso grand slam in the fifth inning on Monday and the Pete Alonso 3-run homer today in the eighth inning, there's a good chance that the Mets might get swept. There's a very good
There
chance.
is. They didn't really battle that well. They didn't play all that well. They haven't been playing all that well in general. It was just literally Pete Alonso jumping the Marlins. That's all
Pete
you can really say.
Alonso Pete Alonso saved them from a potential sweep because if he doesn't hit that home run, they lose today. And if he doesn't hit that grand slam on Monday, the game is very different.
Oh, that game is very different. But that's kind of how the cookie crumbled in this Mets series. At least we took the Sandy start, and with the way this team is playing and is looking, and even with the expectation, I'm not completely disappointed in
No,
in
absolutely
it
not.
overall. And then tomorrow we get the off day, which, like I said earlier, is going to be very important because, like, I mean, our bullpen is taxed. So I guarantee you, we find out somebody gets DFA or sent down, and they bring up a new arm because this bullpen is just used up. Curry might Xavier Curry might get sent down, or Soriano who basically ate up a lot of innings in that blowout win on against the Mets. And one of those two guys is probably getting DFA'd or sent down, however you want to call it. And,
And I
and
want to add, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, and it's just that, we call him somebody. I don't really know who we have down there, but they gotta find somebody, and we call them up, and they're gonna need to pick some innings in that Brave series coming up over the weekend.
I I think that you send on Bayozo for another bullpen arm, which will ended up being Curry. You send on Bayozo for a bullpen arm, and then now you're running with a four-man rotation. So one of two things need to happen, right? Either you get a long man as your fifth starter, and you put him as your fifth starter, or you get a long man to put in your bullpen because you know the Marlins, and I get it. I get that the injuries, to start the year were brutal, but it's like we can't, and I believe the same thing has happened in years prior. You can't start the year with a four-man rotation. It
No,
just
definitely not. But
it just can't happen.
I think things are looking positive. Funny enough, speaking of Bayoso, I think his spot in the rotation comes up Friday, which
Friday.
that already means there's gonna be a move tomorrow. It might be Jansen Junk who
That
comes up
we
because
talked about, yeah.
because Bayoso can't be recalled right now. Like it was, I think it's 15 days after he was sent down or whatever, so they
Right.
can't call him back up, or unless they play somebody on injury list, Phantom IL, I guess, if you want to do that. But other than that, I mean, I think it's gonna be Jansen Junk. Last night, or at least at the time of recording this, yesterday, I believe it was, Cabrera threw a rehab
His
start.
rehab start, yeah.
I don't think he's gonna be back in the Atlanta series, but he might be
No.
back maybe the next Mets series, depending on if he gets another start over the weekend.
Well, I think if the Marlins, know what's good for them, that third spot, that mysterious third spot that now we have no idea who's going to start in it, comes up on Friday, and then it won't come back up until Wednesday, which is the last game of the Mets series. So maybe he pitches that game. Maybe they put him in there for that game, but you know I kind of do want to get into this Atlanta series, as I think that it's gonna be pretty interesting what's coming down the pipe with that series.
Definitely. I mean, what Atlanta is 0-6, 0-5.
And pending tonight's game, possibly 0-7.
Yeah, which I mean, won't be tuning in by the time we post this. It's gonna have already been played, so you guys will know the results. But yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be interesting just to see where they're at coming back home, because right now this Atlanta team, it's it's the best time that the Marlins can be playing them. Honestly, there's no better time for us to be playing them because they don't have Acuna. They they have a lot of their players. I mean, same thing with the Mets. I mean, I kind of said same thing with the Mets series. It was a good time to be playing them. You just don't want to jumpstart anybody, but they have a lot of holes in that lineup that look very ugly. Like they're really using Jared Kelnick, who hasn't been great for them. They have former Marlin Brian De La Cruz, who hasn't done anything for them. I don't know who else I'm missing in that lineup that is kind of an injury replacement. I mean, Profar just went down, which we're gonna talk about a little later as a separate topic, but he just went down, or however you want to say it, suspended with PEDs.
Yeah,
So right now, it's the weakest this team can be. Not playing well and not with a lot of star power, as in years past, if you will.
and a little bit of a live update for you. That's why I'm looking over here. Braves are up 2-0 via a Brian De La Cruz RBI.
Oh,
So
that's funny timing right now.
that's
And
that's a live update for you.
I don't want to put this bad mojo on us. Wouldn't it just be funny if this guy De La Cruz somehow had like a good series versus us? It would just be classic, wouldn't it?
It would just be classic. And so let me just break down how I feel about this Brave series, because I kind of feel, I mean, I feel like the same, a lot of Marlins fans are feeling the same way, but I feel that way for different reasons and not for pessimistic reasons. I just think that, say say the Braves win tonight, right? They're still 1-6. They're still 1-6. They're going into the first home series of the year, and then you're coming into Atlanta 1-6, and you know how those fans are. You know how the atmosphere is, and being the youngest team in the league, it's like, and I've been saying this all week, joking around, but like, what's what's Max Meyer gonna do when the lights turn off in Truist Park and everyone starts chopping and the song starts going? What's he gonna do in a moment huge like that? And what's what Stowers is gonna do with 2 men on, 2 outs, and the crowd is going wild because he's on a 2-2 count. So it's like, yes, the Braves may not be in a good spot right now, but there's a different atmosphere that comes to playing in that stadium versus that team in front of those fans. And as we've talked about previously, you and I, we don't have a good track record in the last 5-10 years versus Atlanta, especially not in Atlanta. So, it'll be very telling to me if they win this series. I'm going to go ahead and say, you know, my expectations for this series is just like I said to you prior to the Mets series. It's a good stepping stone forward if you at least take one in Atlanta and we move
Yeah.
from there. If they win two, if they win three by some stretch of the imagination, then great. We overperformed. But you don't want to go into Atlanta and especially not get killed because that's what we're famous for in Atlanta. You don't want to get crushed. You don't want to have an embarrassing walk off, but you definitely. Damn, I thought I saw something over there. You don't you don't want to get crushed. You don't want to have an embarrassing walk off, but you do want to be competitive and at least take 1 out of 3.
And and I think with this Atlanta series, I mean, for for McCullough, Clayton McCullough, it's obviously not his first time in Atlanta. He's been there in the play. I mean, he's been the Dodgers' first base coach. He's been there in the playoffs. I don't know if he was the Dodgers' first base coach when Acuna hit that home run in the playoffs versus Walker Buehler. I don't know if he was. I'm gonna assume he was because he's been with the Dodgers for a long time. He knows Atlanta, and he needs to understand he has a young team, and just prepare them to fight. That's the only thing you can really do when you're not with this team in Atlanta. Just don't give up and fight every single game. That's the only mentality you gotta have.
And that's what I'm getting at. I think that in this series in particular, they could be 1-6, they could be 0-7. I personally don't care. I think that record does not matter when it comes to them, especially when you're playing away.
I mean, I think it's a series where if we start really breaking down Atlanta's roster, I think, I mean, as long as you don't get beat by mostly who Albies and Olsen and Riley, you can kind of
You can work around them.
you can work around them and you can put yourself in a position to win. Because outside of those guys, there's not a lot of big time threats
No.
in that lineup. Now if other guys just beat you because they got a pitch, whatever here and there, that's so be it. But you really just can't let Olsen, Riley, and Albies right now beat you. I don't know. I don't know about missing anyone else in that lineup. And
I mean,
and
some
maybe
would
a
say
Michael
Michael
Harris.
Harris. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe a Michael Harris, even though he hasn't really performed too well, but he did spend part of 2024 injured. But those guys, Michael Harris, um, Olsen and Riley and Albies, just don't let those guys beat you. And that's how you put yourself in positions to at least give yourself a chance to win.
I agree. I will see, and we'll see what's coming. We'll see what's coming with that Brave series.
Yeah, because then after that we have New York, and I think after so it goes Atlanta. So tomorrow Thursday when this video is up, it's gonna be the off day. Then we go into Atlanta. Then we go to New York to play the Mets, and then from there I think we play the Nationals. So at least my schedule starts to
Yeah, we
slow down.
play. We have a homestand versus the Nationals and the Diamondbacks after that.
Yeah, so I mean it's not super scary teams, but the Diamondbacks are a good team. But we'll get into that
Yeah.
once the time comes around and a little later. Um, so yeah, that's kind of our preview and breakdown on what's been going on with the Marlins. And now I think we move on to some of these topics that have just been going around the league on throughout opening day, throughout opening week.
Yeah.
And
Let's get
I want
into
to
it.
start off with talking about right now, actually, a lot of these contract extensions that have been going down lately. So I'm right now looking at my laptop and we can kind of break down, um, I guess, in order, if you will, of how they happened. or group them by team is what I'll do better instead.
You
So the
got
Red
two or
Sox,
three?
we had I think four in total
Oh, that I missed some. I must have missed some.
because Garrett Crochet got a contract extension for 6 years. I don't have the amount that he got, but I think that's great for the Red Sox. To me, it kind of feels like you're repeating history of Chris Sale. I mean, they got him from the White Sox the same way they got Chris Sale, and he was a big part in winning the World Series in 2018. Um, so that's a big one. You have any thoughts on that one in general?
Crochet is one of those guys that was like a heavily marketed prospect. And, what are you going to do in a market like the White Sox? So I think he gets traded over to the Red Sox. Was it traded? Yeah, he got traded,
Yeah,
right?
he got traded.
Yeah, he gets traded over to the Red Sox, and now he's in a bigger market team, and he's performing well, and everyone likes him. And so just like they did it with Campbell, and I knew you were about to mention it, so that's why I'm segueing into that
Yeah,
one. Just like they did with Campbell, they're locking in young talent, and I think that that's the recipe to win for any team. As long as you lock down the talent, the young talent, the likable talent, then not only do you win, but that's how you keep fans believing in your product.
yeah. And then, as you just mentioned, Campbell, I'll go into that one. And the graphic I have on my laptop right now for my notes does have how much he got. So they extended Kristen Campbell for 8 years, $60 million. And
Which is
honestly,
crazy, by the way. Which is
I
crazy.
mean, it is a little crazy, but at the same time, they just bought really low on him because he's just making his debut this season, rookie season. Last year, he was in single A, he was in A ball. So he hasn't, I mean, whether they believe he's going to be like this superstar, which is why they extended him, he hasn't proven right now what his true value is. We don't have
Yeah, they
a
threw him a bone.
yeah, we don't have a large enough sample size to know exactly what kind of player he's gonna be. So
Right.
for now, I think they just bought really low on him, and I mean, if he pans out into the star they think he's gonna be,
It'll be
then that's
genius.
then it'll be genius and it'll be great for them. And also, I do want to add to the Red Sox because although they haven't extended anyone else this year, last year they did extend Cedin Rafaela, their center fielder. And I mean, I think it's just a trend with the Red Sox, like to just grab their young talent and extend them because soon enough they're gonna have Roman Anthony. In my opinion, the number one prospect in baseball, not Roki Sasaki. He doesn't count. Um, but I think once he gets called up and starts playing, they're gonna try to extend him right away too.
Yeah.
And they also have shortstop Marcelo Meyer, who's a top prospect for them. He might be, I think, their second prospect in that farm system. When he gets called up, which right now he's being blocked by Trevor Story, but when he gets called up, they're gonna try and extend him as well. So I mean, good on the Red Sox. I'll say this: that's I think how you win in this game. You sign your top talent to extensions when they're cheap. I mean, funny enough, we were just talking about the Braves. They did that with their talent. They did that with Albie. They did that with Riley. They did that with Acuna. That is how you win. You're not gonna compete in free agency versus the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, whoever else is spending big money. You're not gonna compete with them. So you have to go and sign them. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
Yeah, I completely agree. And funny enough, we were talking about it earlier. Like that's the way that you win in this league. Because, like you said, when it comes to big market teams, you're not going to outbid the Yankees. You're not going to outbid the Dodgers. You're not going to outbid the Mets. I mean, that's exactly why, this whole free agency thing with Soto was really free agency because it was really between the Yankees and the Mets, and nobody else is going to be able to compete with that.
yeah,
The Yankees and Mets were the only ones willing to give him over $700 million. So if you want to win in the long run, you have to lock down your talent early before it's too late. Which is funny that we did that with Sandy. We did that with
yeah,
Sandy. We gave him a 5-year extension, and pretty damn good contract, to be honest with you. So, you know, I will say I think that, and not to segue back to the Marlins, but I think that if the Marlins want to build on anything that comes from this year, it starts with locking down players that you feel are going to impact your future.
Definitely. And then the next guy to get extended was Jackson Merrill from the Padres, 9 years, 135 million, which I think out of all the players extended might be the best player or the best extension handed out. Because in my opinion, he's a five-tool player. I mean, he's out there every day. He would have won Rookie of the Year if it wasn't for Paul Skeens. And the
And
Dodgers,
some would
I mean,
argue,
not the
and some would
Dodgers.
argue that he should have won it.
Yeah, not the Dodgers. I don't know why I said the Dodgers, but the Padres locked down, a future star player, which I think is the first one out of these players that they've locked down, because they haven't locked down Tatis, and he's somebody who might end up wanting to test free agency. That's probably why they haven't locked him down. So at least you get, Merrill, and if someone like Tatis walks, then you still have talent coming up that farm system. I mean, they have Ethan Salas, they have Leo Dallas DeVries, and then you just locked up Merrill.
You locked up Merrill, and in the event that something happens and Tatis walks, then you have Merrill to build around for the future.
Yeah, so it's a great move. And then the last one that came out later in the day was that the Diamondbacks extended Ketel Marte for 6 years, 116 million, with a
Oh
player
yeah,
option. With a player
I actually
option,
didn't hear about this one.
yeah, with a player option for 2023, which I think the Merrill one, in my opinion, is the best extension out of all the ones that were handed out today because he's the youngest player. He's only what 21, I believe,
Right.
and you're gonna get him for majority of his prime. But I think that if you're talking about in the current moment,
Oh, Ketel Marte is the best player.
Ketel Marte is the best player to be extended. He is, I mean, he's an underrated second baseman. He's been a big part of that Diamondbacks team. He's been there through their crappy years, and now he's finally there to reap the benefits of them having success, and competing a little bit. So I mean, props to him for getting. I mean, honestly, underpaid, but he still got paid, and just getting what's his finally. I mean, I think he's an underrated player in the league.
He's underrated, and in that year where they they made the World Series, right? It wasn't the
Yeah,
Phillies, it was them, right?
yeah,
You
them
know,
versus the Rangers.
in that year that they made the World Series, it was him and Carroll carrying the team. So Ketel Marte is super underrated, and he's super. He's a super important part of that team, and that run that they made that year would have never been possible without him.
Yeah, and he's been just a very big part of their team in general. So I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from this segment of just talking about player extensions is that's how you compete as a smaller market team or as a team, not necessarily smaller market, because I don't think Boston is small market. I don't think San Diego is a small market. Arizona might be a smaller market compared to the other teams, but I mean, really, if you're worried about them leaving in free agency, you sign them early and you keep them around. Now with
I agree.
Marte, I don't think you were necessarily signing him early because he was already years
Yeah,
into his career and stuff. But still, really, the big takeaway is more teams need to start doing this.
I'm with you. I think that's the way to win.
And I think we now segue or just move on and talk about the freaking torpedo bats because I can't even say that name with a straight face, but I get it. I mean, the bats look like torpedoes, and so I'm gonna go ahead and tell this whole story of everything I know about it, which is this: these torpedo bats apparently are not new to this year. Like the so what happened was the Yankees came out versus the Brewers, which by the way the Brewers suck this year, and hit like 15 home runs or something crazy like that over 3 games, and then Michael Kay, their announcer on the broadcast, just broke the story of Jazz and Volpe, and even I think Bellinger using these so-called torpedo bats, and that's kind of where the story came from. But what we learned after the fact was that these torpedo bats aren't necessarily new. They've been around at least since last year. There's photos of Francisco Lindor using it. I believe he was using it in this series versus the Marlins and in the first
Yeah.
series versus the Astros. I think there's even photos of Devers using the torpedo bat. There's I know Junior Caminero was using it. Ryan Jeffers
Uh,
was using it.
and then Ellie De La Cruz also using it as well.
Yeah, Ellie De La Cruz using it, and he hit what 2 home runs with
Hit
it.
2 homers. Yeah.
And I'm gonna state this right now before I continue with these, the story about these torpedo bats. Is that at the end of the day, I think, like the saying goes, it's the Indian, not the arrow. Meaning these bats give you an advantage, but if the hitter can't hit, it doesn't matter what advantage it gives you. The hitter's got to be able to hit either way. Now, if you find it advantageous towards you because it helps your hitting style and it helps you hit better, use it. If not, then don't. I think it's really up to the player.
I just think that people people like to blow things like this, and I'm so sorry if you could hear that. Um, People like to blow things like,
Yeah, we're gonna have to excuse the background noise.
sorry, that's like a biker gang, bro. Anyway, um, people like to blow things like this out of proportion. You know, there's nothing different or nothing. Yeah, there's more wood around the label, okay, but there's nothing more, like you said, advantageous about using this, torpedo bat. It's like, yeah, there's more wood around the label, and yeah, it may be easier to, pop the ball because there's more wood around the area you're hitting it. But at the end of the day, man, if you don't know how to swing a bat, the wood being on the label is not going to help you hit a home run.
Yeah, and
Just like just the, and this and I know this is an unrelated topic, and this is not part of the discussion, but it's the same sentiment I have towards the discussion regarding um, the Hall of Fame and steroids. Like, I'm sorry, no matter how much, even if I get up right now to 200 pounds full muscle and I grab a bat, no matter how much steroids I take, I'm not going to be able to hit a home run.
yeah,
It's just the reality of the situation. Whether it's steroids, whether it's torpedo bats, whether it's a bat made of titanium, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're not good at baseball and you don't have the tools to be good at it, then it doesn't matter whether or not you you're using steroids, torpedo bat. None of that matters.
no, definitely. And so to continue with this story about the torpedo bat, so basically the way they came about is this MIT physicist, Aaron Leonhardt, who used to work for the Yankees. Now he's on the coaching staff of the Marlins. Basically, did a study on, I guess, the swing path or where the hitters make contact the most, and he was like, why not just move the barrel part and add more wood to the section of the bat where you're hitting it, which is the label. And it seems to be working. I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's just universal across the league because I don't know if every player hits the ball in that specific area of the label. You know, I'm not in there analyzing every hitter swing, but I think it kind of goes player by player at this point, where it's if the bat works for you, use it. If it
Right.
doesn't, then don't.
I agree.
We'll see. I mean, how this develops as the season goes on. I definitely think more teams are gonna start using it, or the Braves, for example, are a team that apparently there was a news that came out about them that they put in an order for the torpedo bats. So I guess the players want to try it out from the Braves, and I mean, clearly it seems like they need it.
Yeah,
So
and I think it's going to be a thing of recency bias, right? Everyone's going to be like, "Oh, look at all these players hitting these home runs," and so everyone's going to end up using the torpedo bats.
yeah, and I mean
And
it's it's the same thing that happened with like all this pitching tech that pitchers were using to increase velocity, to increase RPM, to increase their their pitch shapes. You know, it if it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
I agree.
So really, I don't think it's that crazy of a story. The only thing that I loved about it, and the only reason I kept going back to it when it first dropped, is because I just found the name Torpedo to be pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, there's that, and then this also adds on kind of on top of what came out with the Torpedo Bat. It's the fact that I wonder if the baseball is juiced right now, because if you go back to opening day, the Orioles hit like 6 home runs on opening day. That I don't know how many home runs they've smacked over their last few games. The Yankees were smacking home runs. Eugenio Suarez from the Diamondbacks, who's a freaking juice ball merchant because he broke out in 2019 with the Reds. He has already like 4. He has a grand slam. He had like 2 in 1 game. Judge had 2 in 1 game. I mean, I understand Judge is a power hitter, so maybe he's off the table. Jazz had like 2 in 1 game. He had like 3, I think, in the span of 2 games.
I think that I think this might be one of your conspiracy theories about the ball being juiced here. I think that it's just a trend. I think that it's just people have been trending towards more pop. The game has become less contact and more pop, and I think that they're just teaching hitters to put the ball in the air. And so like I think that the game, as opposed to the ball being juice, quote unquote, I think that the game has become more pop than contact. You know, Marlins are playing Moneyball right now. So that's why we have the notion of like, oh, the hit comes on contact. But in baseball, the notion is mainly to pop the ball, to get the ball over the fence. And because that's what people find exciting, and people love home runs, and that's what teams teach. But us, us that were playing Moneyball, we don't have that same ideology in this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll need more data like as the season goes on to really even determine if the ball is actually juiced and really compare it to 2019, which is
Hmm.
the only other season, at least in recent memory, where the ball was juiced. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's toned down a little bit. I think it's toned down a little bit since opening weekend
Yeah,
specifically.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's been that crazy, but I don't know. I mean, I was definitely riding the juice ball conspiracy most of opening weekend because that was. I mean, to be fair to the people that say it's not juice, the freaking Yankees were playing the Brewers and their pitching staff has been horrific.
Yeah, man. I
Nestor
mean,
Nestor got blown up for like I don't even know what 4 home runs.
you have like 4 homers.
So really, who knows? I mean, maybe Eugenio Suarez just found out that home run swing because he was hitting a decent amount of home runs last year when he got traded to the Diamondbacks. So who knows? Um. So yeah, now we can move on to some player storylines,
Sure.
if you will, and some of the ones that I find interesting here are Mackenzie Gore on opening day had 13 strikeouts. I know we're a little late to that
But
game.
to be fair to you, that's still the highest strikeout count to current day. So it's still
Yeah.
a credible story.
So yeah, I mean that was an amazing game, and that was versus the Phillies too, not just any slouch of a team. Too bad the Nats bullpen just blew the game, and I think Harper and Schwarber both went deep off of both hit homers off of the Nats bullpen. Um, we've had a few players getting injured on home runs. I mean, in that Pirate series versus the Marlins, Nick Gonzalez, their shortstop,
Gonzalez.
hit the home run and then fractured his ankle.
He somehow managed to fracture his ankle, either on the swing or coming out of the box. I don't know what he did, but he
Yeah, because
somehow
the cameras
fractured
weren't
his
even on
ankle.
him, at least on the Marlins broadcast, to show what happened out of the box. And then Glaber Torres also was another one who he stayed in the game after this, but he hit a home run, and as he was rounding the base, he started grabbing his hip a little bit. But he stayed in the game, and he hasn't been removed or he's been playing ever since. And
Oh,
that was in the opening series versus the Dodgers. So I think he's okay there. I don't think there's anything to worry about with him there. Um, I'm gonna save some of these other ones for a little later because I think I have a few rants I can go on. But we're gonna move on to Otto Lopez, who's just been raking since opening day.
he has been out of control. I mean, he's hitting somewhere around 340, 350 right now. And it's like,
And
you
not only
know,
that, his OPS is above 1,000 right now. Like
yeah.
it's like 1,000 something. It might have gone down after today's game. Who knows? But
Yeah,
let's just say an OPS over 900 to be
it's been
safe.
insane, and he's been a key part of why they're winning baseball games. One could hope, knock on wood, that this continues, but he's been spectacular, and one would argue he's been the best player on the team.
I I would honestly say that. I mean, he's played some great defense. He saved a couple of runs and made some great defensive
Yeah,
plays, not only in the Pirates series but in the Mets series as well. So that's a big one. Um, I mean, some of the other notes I have here are about the contract extensions, but we already talked about those. And then the other one that was really interesting that stood out to me that I wrote down here is Evan Carter, who I believe debuted in 2023
hmm
when he was called up towards the end and was on that World Series winning Texas Rangers team. He didn't make the opening day roster for the Rangers, and he last I checked, so somebody can correct me. Last I checked, he was batting 111 in the minor leagues for them in AAA. I mean, that's just very disappointing out of Evan Carter.
and I think I want to take this one. I want to lead with this one, and I think that's a perfect way to introduce the next one. I want to give a big congratulations today to Rafael Devers for finally getting his first hit. Um, Finally, he decided after 7 games played that he wanted to play baseball again today, and he delivered not only a hit but an RBI as well. So, you and I talked about this a little bit over the weekend. He started the opening series, well, and really until today, I think he was 0 for 19 with I think
He
like
was like,
15 strikeouts.
yeah, he had like 15 strikeouts.
So you and I talked about this, and just because he got a little RBI today doesn't mean anything's changed. But you know, I do think that in terms of Devers, a lot has to do with what happened in the offseason with Bregman. You and I have very different opinions about this. I think that the Red Sox kind of blew it. I think they
Well,
blew
I
it.
think I think before we get any farther on the Devers, like I give our opinions, I want to lay out a little timeline of how his season from the beginning of spring training to right now has gone. He So basically what happened was spring training started and he really didn't play a lot of games till the end of spring training. Apparently he was dealing with a shoulder injury. I don't know if it was his left or his right, but he's been dealing with a shoulder injury. And when Alex Cora, the Red Sox manager, went up to him in spring training and told him, "Are you ready to start? Like, I want to put you in. I want you to start getting some at bats, to get ready for the season." He told him, "No, I'm not feeling well. I'm not feeling good. My shoulder's still bothering me." I I don't know how much that's affecting his play, in terms of what's going on. But I will say this about the injury, right? And well, I will say this about the injury that if he really is that hurt and it's what's been affecting his play, not only he should be playing, because if if you're gonna be hurt and you're gonna play, then to me it feels like you should be playing well, even if you're hurt. Because if you're hurt and you're not playing well, then you shouldn't be playing.
You know, I think that that's something that the Red Sox are putting out there. I know you follow the Red Sox as close, or maybe close as you follow the Marlins, but you know, you have to put yourself in these shoes and really think to yourself, if Rafael Devers was that hurt, are the Red Sox going to start him and let him K 15 times over a span of 4 games? Of course not.
Well, I
Really, of
mean,
course not.
in all honesty, we've seen it in the past where teams will DH a player because he's hurt and can't play the field. So maybe, but I don't think it's the right move to do early on in the season if he's hurt.
Yeah, I think he's not. I think it's BS. I think he's not hurt. I think that he's actually hurt about what happened with Bregman. I think that that's what's going on. And I think that that's what's affecting his play now that he had an injury in the off season, going to spring training, whatever. He's talking to Cora, telling him, "Oh, I don't feel good, whatever." But at the end of the day, he gave the green light to Alex Cora and say, "I feel good enough to play, and we're moving forward." So if Cora followed up with him and said, you know, after maybe 2 or 3 games and said, "Hey, you're not playing well. Are you okay?" You could imagine that Devers said, "Yeah, I'm okay." So that's where my opinion lies on this. I think that it's more of a mental game, uh, weighing on him. The situation with Bregman happened with the whole playing time at third base, and I think because you don't hit 15 times by accident, that doesn't happen by accident. So I think it's more that than any type of injury that he could be suffering from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I'm gonna say it like this, and I'm gonna put it bluntly how I feel. It's it's just I get it, I get it. He wanted to be the third baseman, but what I think the Red Sox did was to win. Bringing in Alex Bregman, and they're gonna play him at third. It's it's creating the best scenario for the Red Sox to win. He he should understand that and be more willing to move to DH in order to put winning first. The Red Sox aren't tanking his value. He signed with them till his age 36 season. He has all his prime years with the Red Sox. His sole focus should be winning. And if that means that the Red Sox bring in Alex Bregman to play third because he's a better defender at third, and that means moving him to DH, he should make the most of the situation and go out there and perform, because it's if this team is at their best, they're winning. I mean, they're World Series winners in my opinion. Like,
Victor,
they are one of the better teams in the whole American League.
Victor, but that's not the way. That we're not in the 1900s anymore. That's not the way sports are ran. Sports aren't run. Sports are, yes, about winning, but also sports has become, and you know this because you watch sports. Sports has become more about the players as well. Yes, there's a team. Yes, winning is the most important, but it is also about the players.
I
Rafael Devers got paid. Yes, he got. Just let me finish. Yes, he got paid. He got paid, and sure, he's supposed to, in his best interest, he's supposed to have the team first. But it's also what I told you. It comes in loyalty as well. Yeah, sure. Bregman was brought in to help them win, but Bregman was also a piece that came after Devers. Devers has been with the Red Sox his whole career, hasn't he?
Yeah,
So if he's telling Cora, it's like what I told you. If he's telling Cora, "I want to play third base," let him. Unless it's an atrocity, unless it's a complete atrocity, let him play third base and have Bregman DH. If
I
Bregman wanted to be on the Sox so bad, let him be DH.
I just I get what you're saying, but it's one of those things where I think that's just ego at play. I mean, what else is it? Like it's a little selfish
But
because
that's what sports are now, though. Sports are now ego driven. Sports are,
the
you know it. You know it, though. You know it because you don't just watch baseball, you watch football, you watch basketball, you watch all of it. Sports are ego driven, and the moment that a player doesn't get what they want, they're gone. That's exactly why Soto didn't sign with the Yankees because the Yankees weren't willing to bow down to Soto and give him a fucking suite in Yankee Stadium.
no, of course, but that's kind of where I'm like, see, because if in this situation for Devers would be different, and he was playing for value, and he was playing for I mean, I don't have his contract right in front of me, so I don't know the numbers specifically at this moment. But he's there through his age 36 season. I don't even know if he's 30 yet or how old he is right now. But I mean, I think he needs to set aside everything, take his roles at the. He's one of the best hitters in this league. And if you want to narrow it down to left-handed hitters, he's one of the best left-handed hitters. I mean, I put up a little graphic here on my notes that shows you some stats about Devers. Since 2019, he's eighth in home runs, he's fifth in RBIs, and he's second in total bases. And if you then move on to players with 25 plus homers, an OPS over 125, since 20, he's top five. I mean, he's one of the best hitters, period, in this league. He needs to be more willing to move and do what's good for the team. I mean, what does he have left to do? He's not gonna make more money playing third base. He already made his money. Even if he leaves the Red Sox at age 36, he's not gonna get paid
Victor,
more
Victor, you
than
know
the Red
very
Sox.
well, you know very well that he is not satisfied with the money they gave him, and no player is satisfied. Because how old is Rafael Devers? How old is he? Tell me.
Let me check right now. Let me look up his age because I don't feel like he's 30 yet. I'm looking it up right now with his ages. I got he is currently dude, why can't I find his age? Just continue with your point. I'll find his age right now. He's 28.
He's 28. So you're telling me that 28, the age is 28 to say like 31, 32 are considered your prime. So you're telling me that he doesn't want a chance to maybe get a bigger contract with the Red Sox? So he's supposed to just bow down and say, "Okay, whatever, you guys paid me, so I'm going to bend over and do whatever you want."
Well, no, but he's already there through age 36. I mean,
But it doesn't. But you could always adjust the contract, though. You could always restructure contracts. It's in any sport. If the
yeah,
player's
but
playing well and asks for more money, then you either you give him more money, or the player says, "Okay, I'm going to request a trade."
I
So
mean, there were some talks about him potentially requesting a trade, but I think currently and where the situation is, he just needs to start hitting. There's no bottom line. There's no excuse for him to be playing the way he's playing, and he needs to start hitting.
okay, but the I think a large part in why he's playing the way he's playing is because of the Red Sox. They are at fault for his start, and because of what they did to him. You don't show loyalty by doing what they did. Sure, and I agree with you. Bregman is a better third baseman. We can both agree on that. He's better defensively by 100 miles. But when it comes down to loyalty and your cornerstone of your franchise is saying, "Hey, this is not what I want," then if you care so much about loyalty and you care so much about your team and so much about winning, then it's also about listening to the cornerstone of your franchise.
I will also add, which I don't know what dynamic this necessarily adds to the situation, but the previous, which I think was Heim Bloom was his name, who was the previous GM that was the one who gave Devers that contract extension, is no longer there. with the Red Sox. So maybe he's still playing third if it was Heim Bloom. Maybe he's not. Who knows? But he's not there right now, and it's Craig Breslow as a GM.
It's messed up, bro. I think it's messed up, and I think that maybe today he breaks out of it, and that's it. That's all she wrote, and he gets on his horse and whatever. But I think that for a team that says that, oh, I'm gonna give you a contract, and oh yeah, you're our cornerstone. I think that it's BS that they did that to him, and I think that for any team looking to build any type of something that you would do.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly we both disagree on this situation. I personally think he should set aside some of those things and just start hitting, start playing to his potential. Because I mean, I'm not saying that not to be a little selfish, but I'm simply saying that he has already his contract. He has his money being paid to him. He can go be a World Series winner, which if this team lives up to their potential, I think they win the AL East.
Me and you already had this conversation, and I think I want to end with this and move on to another topic because we're not going to agree on this. But there's nothing more important in sports, in life, and anything than being respected. And when someone goes against your wishes that you clearly asked, you're being disrespected. And that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I think that'll be a topic you guys can comment down below and let us know how you feel. But moving on to the next topic I want to talk about before we get to, I think, what's going to be our last one. Quickly, I want to touch on Jerickson Profar, who popped positive for PEDs. And here's kind of what I have about him. He was a once top prospect with the Texas Rangers. People thought he was going to be amazing. He never panned out anywhere. He was a bust. 2024, he signed with the Padres and had the best year of his career. I don't have the stats in front of me, which I probably should, but
Shockingly enough, knowing what we know now.
yeah. Apparently, what they say is that he was tested 8 times last year for PEDs and never tested positive.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting to me. But also, he tested positive for something called HCG, which John Hamish, MLB reporter, said that it was the same thing Manny Ramirez used to take, and it's a steroid cycler to basically clean your system out and reset your testosterone after you've been taking steroid. So I don't think there was a statement put out, and I really don't think he didn't know. I think he definitely knew about what was happening,
Of
and it
course
was
he
just
knew.
and it was just the same classic statement that players put out after they pop positive.
Of course he knew, and of course this was happening into last season. Because if there's a masking agent that gets caught and you test positive for steroids, then of course he didn't get caught last year. Because probably every time that the test came around, he was clean. So, it makes total sense to me why he didn't test positive last year. And oh, what a shocker! The beginning of this year, he gets a random test, and boom, they caught him.
Yeah, and
So
honestly, that kind of hurts the Braves. I mean, who've been playing terrible, start off the year bad, and they don't they lose the outfielder. I mean, let's say he comes back and plays well or whatever the case is. They won't even have him for the playoffs. He's not only going to be suspended 80 games, he won't be eligible for the playoffs. And I don't know, that kind of looks bad on the Red Sox because I think this kind of starts to make his career like just look bad in general.
yeah,
Like once top prospect, he never panned out. He was a bust. Had one good year, finally got paid, and from what I heard, his contract was structured like in it's 3 years. So in the first year he's getting paid 12, and in the last 2 years he's getting paid 15 each. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he knew he was gonna get popped, so he was like backload my contract and help me out. That's what he told his agent. Really, I just think it looks and and it almost makes the Braves look a little bad because it's like you always do physicals and you always test these players before you sign them. and just to have this
How'd
guy,
you not know?
yeah, how'd you not know? And then just to have this guy test positive, just really looks bad. I mean, and I'll end at least my portion of this topic. I don't know if you have anything else. I'll end it by saying I'm honestly still shocked that we still have PED users in this league in general.
Oh, I'm not shocked, and I'm sure that there's a ton that we won't know about, and I'm sure that like excluding people like Judge and Stanton that are obviously freaks of nature that don't need any steroids. I personally don't think that Stanton ever took steroids, and I personally don't think that Judge ever took steroids either. Um, but I think that there's plenty of these, medium-sized guys that just pop the ball that could be taking steroids. You know who's one funny enough that we talked about earlier that, and this is not me accusing, but it's saying like it's definitely possible. Like for example, Cattell Marte, that dude smacks the hell out of the ball, and he's a little guy.
Yeah,
Same with Altuve. We'll never know if Altuve took it or not, but he's another one, a little guy that smacked the ball.
yeah,
So I think that you know it's the whole thing about getting caught or not. Look at Profar. Had Profar not been tested, who knows if he wouldn't even been caught this season.
yeah,
So you know what I mean? We'll never know how many people are using it.
yeah. I mean that's just kind of. I mean, I think it's all around just kind of shameful. But
Yeah.
the final topic I want to talk about is Roki Sasaki
Yeah,
because
dude.
he had a very bad outing in in uh in his first outing at Dodger Stadium. He only went one inning. He walked four batters. He had 61 pitches. I think he only had like 38 strikes thrown. And this will be the final topic, and I kind of want to lay out the full story about Sasaki because this goes back to when he was in Japan, and this goes back to before he even got into the MPB. There is the Koshina series. For people who don't know, that's the best high school baseball series, not just in Japan, but in the entire world. They play in professional stadiums and it gets packed out. He was already dealing with arm injuries since high school. His coach in high school decided not to pitch him in the Koshina finals because he would rather save his arm. They the team got a lot of backlash for that. Fans were like, "Oh, why didn't you pitch Sasaki? He's our best pitcher, whatever." Then he gets into the MPB at age 18. He's never really pitched a full season in the MPB. I don't know if it was at age 18 or where, but at some point in the MPB, he was recommended you need to get Tommy John surgery, and he said no. He opted not to get Tommy John surgery. What did he do instead? He sat out a season, came back, kept pitching, and we fast forward to the 2023 World Baseball Classic. He was throwing 103. Like he topped out at 103. And he looked like this freak of nature guy. But his fastball velocity, ever since that 2023 World Baseball Classic, has been terrible. His fastball velocity has gone down. He in the last like two seasons since then, or season, last year in 2024, he really wasn't that great in terms of like fastball velocity and shape. And then you fast forward to this year when he's getting ready to sign in the MPB. I mean, not in the MPB, in the MLB. He was asking a lot of these teams if they can help fix his fastball, whether that be the shape, the velocity, all of that stuff. And in his first start, his fastball velocity was around 98. Now, remember, in the World Baseball Classic in 2023, it was at 100. So now it's at 98 by the time he's in the MLB, starting in Japan versus the Cubs. Then he gets to Dodger Stadium, and his fastball velocity is down even more, 2 miles per hour, I think, or something like that. It was at like 96. And I get it. I personally don't think the crying was necessary, and I think if he was gonna do it, put it in, walk down to the clubhouse, get in the locker room, cry in there. But at the same time, one thing that has to be said is in Japan, that's a thing. Like teams that don't win the Koshina series, that end up losing in the finals, you'll see them crying on national TV.
Yeah.
So I guess for him, he felt it was normal. But honestly, I don't think he really should have been crying. Like, I understand his life gets uprooted. He's only 23 years old. He comes to to live in the U.S. for the first time. There's no need for him to be crying in the dugout. It's not the same culture in the U.S.
I just think, and I'm a believer in this. Whether you cry or not, it doesn't like it. I'm a firm believer that crying isn't indicative of your character. You could be tough and you could cry. You could be soft and you're crying, or you could be soft and pretend you're tough. You know, but on a national stage with and plenty of sports stars have done it, and I think it's not a good idea. Like, on a national stage, you're playing for the Dodgers, the one of the biggest team, well, top two with the Yankees, biggest teams ever to play baseball, and you're put on this national stage in front of everybody, and you have a terrible start. You don't even finish your second inning, and then you sit on the top of the dugout for everyone to see you, and you're crying, and it's like, what does that do for other teams that are gonna face you now? They're gonna think, "Hey, this guy's soft. Let's get after him."
Yeah,
And so it lets,
bless you.
excuse me, it lets teams know that you're not who they thought you were. Everyone's coming out of the season saying, "Oh, Sasaki," and now he comes in, he gets blown up, and now he's crying in the second inning of his first game at Dodger Stadium. So it's indicative to me that possibly he was not ready for this, but it also tells me that he is going to be targeted moving forward this season.
Definitely, and that's the thing too. Like, he was talked about as this big time, pitcher coming out of Japan, but in reality, he hasn't really pitched full seasons over there. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen moving forward. I don't know if the Dodgers are gonna force him to get Tommy John surgery, or if they're gonna do maybe what the same surgery that Otani had. That wasn't necessarily Tommy John surgery, but it was some sort of elbow surgery at the same time. I mean, if they lose him, if they do it now and they lose him, they don't have to worry about that. I mean, the Dodgers are loaded pitching wise,
Yeah,
so I think it'll be something interesting to monitor throughout the season to see how his outings progress, how his velocity looks, how mentally he looks on the mound.
that's the other part of it. I think that now it's not only going to be like, oh, my fastball's messed up, but I think now it's also going to be, not only is my fastball messed up and I can't, and it's not what I want it to be, but now it's, I'm losing the mental game before the game even starts, because that's the fact of the matter, right? Now he cried on camera, and now before every game he already lost the mental game,
Yeah,
because he knows that everyone on the other team knows that, hey, if we get to this guy, he's gonna have a bad outing, and now he's gonna go cry in the dugout.
yeah,
So
and not only that, but some fans or people out there in general have suggested that he's pitching a little scared because he knows what state his arm is in, and I mean, if it's as bad as they say, he's prone to have his arm blow up at any moment.
yeah, if it's as bad as they're making it seem, maybe he shouldn't be pitching, and that's just my opinion.
And in reality, he should just go and get surgery. I don't know if that's Tommy John. I don't know if that's the labrum surgery, whatever it was called that Otani got. But the
Hmm.
Dodgers should really look into that because, I mean, to be fair to the Dodgers, well, not to be fair, but to be fair to the situation, it's the Dodgers, so you know, they don't lose money on signing a player like him. And second of all, they didn't pay him a crazy amount because he wasn't a free agent. He was posted to the MLB,
Hmm.
meaning they were using only international free agency money. So they only paid him like, I don't have the actual number, but it's not a crazy amount. He's
No,
not making that much, but
no,
that could hurt him in the future once his contract with the Dodgers is up, and we'll see where that goes. I mean,
1,000%, 1,000%.
so I think that'll wrap up this episode of Box the Base. Thank you all for tuning in. and we'll be back here weekly. So yeah, just make sure to subscribe. Check out all the socials in the description. Thank you all for joining. And hey, if you enjoy the episodes, make sure to share them wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you all for being part of this week's episode.
Yes, sir.